can you look at the world today and actually say, yeah, something like a world order is either possible or still extant, or is that an old concept?
So the reality of the present period is that different societies with different histories are now parts of a global system, but that they don't have an agreed concept of world order.
Henry Kissinger, I do not need to hear from you about the liberal world order at the post. You are guilty, sir. You are guilty. You think you got blood on your hands for the bombings back in the Vietnam War? You have blood on your hands for this. You have been the mouthpiece and the prop for these people from the beginning. You propped up the Chinese Communist Party, and not just that, you took the blood money from them. You've been paid for decades by the Chinese Communist Party. It's all going to come out. All the Wall Street guys in business with them, all the corporatists in business with them, all the think tank guys in business with them taking blood money, it's all coming out.
Back in January, we first reported on this show about what we described then as a serious viral outbreak that appeared to be rising from a city called Wuhan in eastern China. Today, less than 2 months later, the Chinese coronavirus is officially a national emergency here in the United States.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Today, the greatest risk of global catastrophe doesn't look like this. Instead, it looks like this. If anything kills over 10 million people in the next few decades, it's most likely to be a highly infectious virus rather than a war. Not missiles, but microbes.
The outcome of the CAPS pandemic in Event 201 was catastrophic. 65 million people died in the first 18 months. Within 6 months, cases were occurring in nearly every country. The global economy was in a free fall. The GDP down 11%. Stock markets around the world plummeted between 20 and 40% and headed into a downward cycle of fear and low expectation.
You ever wonder what people who've actually met Donald Trump, especially powerful, successful people in American business and beyond, who've had to try and interact with him because he's a leader of the free world, say about those encounters behind closed doors?
So I saw him at Trump Tower. I said, hey, science and innovation is a great thing. You should be a leader who drives innovation. And that conversation was about a broad set of things in energy, in health, in education. Pick things you want to do that are big. HIV vaccine, you could, accelerate that. Be associated with innovation.
Well, just a quick comment. We had a good conversation about innovation, how it can help in health, education, impact of foreign aid and energy, and a wide-ranging conversation about the power of innovation.
Then the second time I saw him was the March after that.
Bill Gates is coming to the White House today. He's scheduled to meet with President Trump in the Oval Office at 11 a.m. And ahead of this meeting, the Gates Foundation pointed to global health and public education as potential areas of bipartisan agreement.
In both of those two meetings, he asked me if vaccines weren't a bad thing, because he was considering a commission to look into ill effects of vaccines. And somebody, his name is Robert Kennedy Jr., was advising him that vaccines were causing bad things. And I said, no, that's a dead end. That would be a bad thing. Don't do that.
A member of the Kennedy political dynasty who favors fringe theories on vaccinations over mainstream medical practices says he would lead a new vaccination safety commission under Donald Trump.
I was disappointed and very, very surprised. Mr. Kennedy has been for a long time a very persistent and, I must say, articulate advocate of the notion that vaccines could be associated with autism and other adverse effects.
Did you request the meeting, or did his team call you?
He called.
And what is it that you're looking for in terms of policy on the vaccines?
To make sure that we have that we have scientific integrity in the vaccine process for efficacy and safety of vaccines.
Don't want to do anything to move back from this great public health contribution that vaccines have made.
While the president-elect himself has said he's pro-vaccine, he's tweeted repeatedly about what he believes is a link to autism.
There is no question that there will be a challenge, the coming administration, in the arena of infectious diseases, both chronic infectious diseases in the sense of already ongoing disease, and we have certainly a large burden of that, but also there will be a surprise outbreak.
We cannot let the cure be worse than the problem itself, he tweeted.
Vaccination is the most effective defense against influenza. Despite recommendations by the Center of Disease Control and the Thought Ministry that nearly every American should receive the influenza vaccine annually, however, seasonal influenza vaccination levels in the United States have currently reached only about 45% of the CDC goals. All influenza vaccines presently in use have been developed for circulating or anticipated influenza viruses. These vaccines must be reformulated for each influenza season as well as in the event of a pandemic. Additional research is needed to develop influenza vaccines that provide more effective and longer-lasting protection against many of the viruses.
The president is right. The cure can't be worse than the disease.
In 2018, the PureBright Institute was granted a patent for the coronavirus. The PureBright Institute is funded by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation.
To unleash the full power of the federal government in this effort today, I am officially declaring a national emergency.
Today, the United States has tested its very first coronavirus vaccine. It went to a volunteer that you see right here, 43-year-old Jennifer Haller, who is from Seattle. That's one of the hardest hit areas for this virus.
How are you doing?
I'm doing great. I feel great. Yeah, just a couple of weeks ago, there was a call from volunteers and filled out a form and got a call back and went through the phone screen, past that, went in person for a physical exam, blood draw. Everything looked good there, and here we are. I went in this morning at 8 a.m. and got the first dose. There it is.
You know that famous phrase, the cure is worse than the disease? That is exactly the territory we are hurtling towards.
Vaccines will take a while to be able to move forward and to be able to go through all the safety testing. There are a lot of regulatory aspects here, and what this woman is doing right now, which is really wonderful, is participating in a vaccine trial.
A question about something that happened today, Dr. Fauci. The president said that the FDA will fast-track antiviral treatments for patients with coronavirus, saying that an anti-malarial drug would be made available, and he said that the drug would be made available almost immediately. When the public hears that, and obviously there's a lot of interest, a lot of hope in this, how much confidence should we put in that? And do we know that that drug would even work? Because, as you know, FDA Commissioner Hahn, he didn't go that far.
No. So let me put it into perspective for the viewers, and perhaps we'll understand it better. There is a drug, two drugs, they're very similar, chloroquine, hydroxychloroquine. They've been used for decades for malaria as well as for the treatment of certain autoimmune diseases like lupus. It's a very inexpensive drug. It's tried and true. It's been around for a long time.
Yesterday in the Situation Room, you walked in very proud of acquiring more hydroxychloroquine, and Dr. Fauci was very negative on it, and evidently you guys had a heated exchange. Can you shed some light on that for us?
Sure, there was no pride there. It was simply on Saturday there was a meeting of the task force, and the question before the task force was this, Brian. We have 29 million tablets of hydroxy in FEMA warehouses, and the question before the group was, should we surge that hydroxy into the hot zones? And the task force unanimously voted to do that with the proviso that this can have side effects and that it has to be dispensed not by the federal government but by the patient-doctor relationship.
I want people to live, and I'm seeing people dying. And I've seen people that are going to die without it. And you know the expression, when that's happening, they should do it. What really do we have to lose?
There's been anecdotal, non-proven, anecdotal data that it works. When people give it to someone, it makes them better. But when you have an uncontrolled trial, you can never definitively say that it works.
The other thing I should tell you is that in the city of New York, if you're a patient in the New York Health and Hospital System, which is 11 hospitals run by Dr. Mitch Katz, any patient, virtually every patient that presents with COVID-19 is given a cycle of hydroxy. And when I asked Dr. Katz why, was it because the federal government was telling you to do that, or because he thought it may work? And he said very clearly that it may work.
That's one of the things with a vaccine. When we have a vaccine, we have to do tests, because when you inject that vaccine, when they take whatever it is they have to take, we have to make sure it doesn't have a horrible impact, destroy somebody. Could. So we have to test it for a long period of time. This one, not so much, because it's been out there.
Where you just don't distribute drugs willy-nilly. You may make it more accessible than you would have previously, but you do it in the context to at least get some feel for both safety and whether it works.
We don't have time. We don't have 2 hours, because there are people dying right now. If it does help, great. If it doesn't help, we gave it a shot. We gave it a shot. That's the way I feel.
So Trump insists he was right when he said it would go away possibly by the end of this month. Now, you could either believe him or you could believe Bill Gates.
Well, this is a nightmare scenario, because human-to-human transmissible respiratory viruses can grow exponentially. If we continue countrywide and we're testing the right people to understand what's going on, which is not the case yet, those numbers will start to go down, and then we can look at some degree of opening back up. Things won't go back to truly normal until we have a vaccine that we've gotten out to basically the entire world.
So there you go. Who are you going to believe? The pioneer of the microcomputer revolution who founded Microsoft and is currently working on ending polio and malaria, or the guy who once tweeted, Victoria's Secret reps were nasty to Kate Upton and now she's doing great?
The World Health Organization, W.H.O. Now, this may surprise you, but the organization whose symbol is a snake coiling around the world is not super trustworthy. Apparently, the logo originates from the story of Asclepius, who was revered by the ancient Greeks as a god of healing, and whose cult involved the use of snakes. Great! The cult of snakes is tasked with global health.
In most parts of the world, due to lockdown, most of the transmission that's actually happening in many countries now is happening in the household, at family level. In some senses, transmission has been taken off the streets and pushed back into family units. Now we need to go and look in families to find those people who may be sick and remove them and isolate them in a safe and dignified manner.
Just so you know, we're coming to your house, seizing your children, and, quote, isolating them in a safe and dignified manner, whatever that means.
On an unrelated note, the World Health Organization is horribly corrupt. So corrupt that a recent audit found that the division tackling the coronavirus is underfunded. That's your US taxpayer dollars not at work. The US contributes about $500 million a year to the WHO, more than double any other country.
Now, that's not something that under normal circumstances officials casually drop during briefings. It's the kind of statement that might trigger violence. People don't respond well when you threaten to take their kids. But Ryan said it like it was no big deal, and that's how the media treated it. His threat didn't make headlines in any of the major newspapers in this country. That's the kind of moment we're in.
To look into that, so we're going to look into it. We give a majority of the money that they get, and it's much more than the $58 million is a small portion of what they've gotten over the years. Sometimes they get much more than that. Sometimes it's for programs that they're doing, and it's much bigger numbers. And if the programs are good, that's great as far as we're concerned. But we want to look into it. World Health Organization, because they really are. They called it wrong. They call it wrong.
Jackie. I laugh when the CCP reported no new cases. Anyway, my question is, how corrupt do you think the WHO is? I've seen a video by Ben Shapiro, and they seem to be praising China, yet China is the one who really messed things up. Back in 2017, the Associated Press ran this piece, saying it found more than a third of the WHO's $2 billion budget went to travel, including a lot of first-class airfare and five-star hotels. And US taxpayers are the biggest contributor to the WHO budget. Then there's the audit I referred to earlier. It found there has been a surge in internal corruption allegations across the whole of the organization, with the detection of multiple schemes aimed at defrauding large sums of money from the international body. That included an upsurge of internal complaints of corruption, fraud, and even sexual harassment from across the 7,000-strong organization, overwhelming an internal team of 4 full-time investigators and 2 consultants. Besides that, China has a bunch of shady investments in Ethiopia. I bring that up because the current head of the World Health Organization was a big player in the corrupt Ethiopian government. China also backed his campaign to lead the WHO. And if you just look at the really bizarre way the WHO has handled the coronavirus, from praising the Chinese Communist Party to denying the existence of Taiwan, you've got to suspect something is up. Which might be one reason why President Trump is looking to cut US funding for the WHO in half.
And then earlier today, Senator Marco Rubio told RCP that, quote, the World Health Organization showed favoritism to China, unquote. And then Representative Michael McCaul, the ranking member on the House Foreign Relations Committee, he questioned the integrity of the World Health Organization's director, saying, quote, that there were several red flags in his past with respect to his relationship with China. Do you agree? Do you think the World Health Organization showed favoritism? And then once all the dust settles, do you think that the United States should re-explore its relationship with the World Health Organization?
Well, I think there is certainly a lot of talk that has been very unfair. I think that a lot of people feel that it's been very unfair. It's been very much sided with China, and a lot of people are not happy about it. At the same time, Dr. Fauci and myself and other people, there are people on there that we like and we know. I think your friends are on there, a lot of good people, a lot of good professionals. I don't know, it'd be interesting to hear if you'd like to talk about the World WHO. But the fact is that I have heard for years that is very much biased toward China. So I don't know. Doctor, you want me to get you into this political mess?
No, I don't want you to do that, but I will. Tedros is really an outstanding person. I've known him from the time that he was the Minister of Health of Ethiopia. I mean, obviously, over the years, anyone who says that the WHO has not had problems has not been watching the WHO. But I think under his leadership, they've done very well. He has been all over this. I was on the phone with him a few hours ago, leading a WHO call.
Transparency, sir?
No, I'm not talking about China. You asked me about Tedros.
World Health Organization praising China for its transparency and leadership on their response to the pandemic?
You know, I can't comment on that because, I mean, I don't have any viewpoint into it. I mean, I don't even know what your question is.
Can I follow up on that phone call, please?
Welcome to the group.
Hi guys, as a medical professional, and bro, where do I start?
5G is all the rage right now, but some people are worried that it could make them sick. So we've decided to do a deep dive on this new technology and find out how it affects the human body. Roll that tape.
Transmit on the top. Look on the left-hand side of that tree, on the right-hand side. Look at the green bushes, yeah. Very nice. Look at the left-hand side.
If something can be connected, it will be connected in the 5G world. Autonomous vehicles, smart city energy grids, transportation networks, and water systems. Hundreds of billions of microchips. The 5G revolution will touch all corners of our country.
And I reckon it's to do with the 5G. How's these animals just dying like this?
Introducing 5G. 5G is the next generation technology for mobile networks. Alright, so 5G sure sounds like a promising new technology, but some are concerned it may have adverse health effects. In November 2018, a social media post went viral and it suggested that in the Netherlands, 300 birds have died due to 5G testing. Forums are awash with activists suggesting that the dangers of cell phone radiation are being suppressed. So, does 5G actually have health effects?
Well, we have about 10,000 papers that have been published and many, many hundreds of reviews that have been published that clearly show that there are massive effects on our bodies based on the exposures we already have.
So what exactly is going to be changing when 5G rolls out? Is it a simple case of more exposure, or is it a different type of frequency?
It's not so much the frequency, although that's important. It's the pulsations that are the critical thing. 5G is designed to carry gigantic amounts of information, as you've already stated. And the way that information is carried is by pulsations. We know that the pulsations make these electromagnetic fields much, much more dangerous. And 5G, therefore, is designed to be vastly more dangerous than anything that we've been exposed to date.
Huawei is very dangerous.
Rarely does a country go to war with a private company.
We have met the enemy, and it is Huawei.
But America has done just that.
We're not going to do business with Huawei.
Huawei represents a national security risk.
But is this really about Huawei, or is it something bigger than that?
It's not can you trust Huawei, it's can you trust the Chinese government.
And what is the threat?
This is exactly what China wants. They want to divide Western alliances through bits and bytes, not bullets and bombs.
So what is this war really about, and why is Huawei in the middle of it?
Yesterday, the U.S. president signed an executive order effectively banning U.S. telecom companies from using Huawei.
We're now hearing that the plans to target Huawei had been sitting on the table for months.
Robert O'Brien, President Trump's national security advisor, is warning the Canadian government not to allow Huawei to participate in our 5G network, saying it was frightening and terrifying.
You know, the problem is that in the U.S., the government funding for doing research in this area was cut off between 1986 and 1999. And since that time, the only thing the government has been doing is to push these technologies out, and there's absolutely no effort to determine what kinds of health effects are being created.
The team I lead develops high-power microwave weapons.
This weapon, under development for 15 years, has yet to be used in the field.
We investigate different frequencies on various items. And microwaves particularly are defined as frequencies with wavelengths ranging all the way from 1 meter down to 1 millimeter. And there are different effects on different things.
It's one of the U.S. military's newest non-lethal weapons, an electromagnetic beam that emits an odorless, invisible, and silent blast of heat.
It felt like opening up an oven door, almost mixed with a sting from about my sternum to my neck.
Vodafone's 5G network's available for both its business and individual customers in 7 cities, including here in London, from Wednesday.
Telefonica Deutschland, which operates in Germany under the O2 brand, says that Huawei will work on its 5G network with Nokia on a 50-50 basis. It's being seen as a seal of approval for Huawei from one of Germany's biggest telecom operators.
It's been hyped for months as nothing less than a revolution, embracing the possibilities of super-speed 5G mobile internet in a country already one of the world's most digitally connected.
Makes Spain one of the handful countries in the world where 5G is operational commercially.
For example, to download a 2-hour film on 3G would take about 26 hours. On 4G, you'd be waiting 6 minutes. And on 5G, you'll be ready to watch your film in just over 3.5 seconds. But it's not just internet capacity that will be upgraded, response times will also be much faster. The 4G network responds to our commands in just under 50 milliseconds. With 5G, it will take around 1 millisecond.
Huawei has announced that it will invest $3.1 billion in Italy over 3 years as it looks to expand its business across Europe amid an escalating US-China trade war.
It's the dawn of a new era in China. 5G is now commercially available for the first time.
The commercial process of 5G is speeding up, with more than 130,000 5G base stations expected to be open nationwide by the end of the year.
We're ready.
Hell yeah, been looking forward to this.
Modulating frequencies now.
It's time. Let's light it up.
Are you ready, Neville? Pre-check. Check. Check. Okay, Neville.
In T-minus 3, 2, 1. Ready to launch. Hit the button.
Here we go.
It's working. It's working.
Nationwide 5G is live.
Yeah. And we're just getting started.
Wait until they see what's next.
Millimeter waves are short, they have limited range and penetration. The network will require very many transmitters that will target each user thanks to special cells which can track his or her every move.
Secure 5G networks will absolutely be a vital link to America's prosperity and national security in the 21st century. It will transform the way our citizens work, learn, communicate, and travel. It'll make American farms more productive, American manufacturing more competitive, and American healthcare better and more accessible. Basically, it covers almost everything when you get right down to it. Pretty amazing.
They primarily advertised this system as a way to connect every human on this planet to the internet.
This will be more secure and resilient. 5G networks will also create astonishing and really thrilling new opportunities for our people. Opportunities that we've never even thought we had a possibility of looking at. We cannot allow any other country to outcompete the United States in this powerful industry of the future. We are leading by so much in so many different industries of that type, and we just can't let that happen. The race to 5G is a race America must win, and it's a race, frankly, that our great companies are now involved in. We've given them the incentive they need. It's a race that we will win.
And speed matters. Speed matters because whoever gets to the new market sets the values for that market. And we could either have the market with the values of our Constitution, where every human being is created equal and loved equally by God and their parents and their brothers and sisters, and that respect is manifested in the rights of an individual to vote, to own land, to bear arms, all the things the Constitution gives us, or we can have the values that we see manifest in China.
The long-term goal is to create a comprehensive global communication system that provides high bandwidth, low latency connectivity anywhere in the world, and provides cross-links through the satellites so that you can have improved long-distance internet.
But if it is, in fact, April, then that's great news, because if you remember, when public health officials were first warning about the coming outbreak of the coronavirus, the president reassured us all by saying this.
The virus, they're working hard. Looks like by April, in theory, when it gets a little warmer, it miraculously goes away. I hope that's true.
Now, the virus that we're talking about having to do, a lot of people think that goes away in April with the heat, as the heat comes in. Typically, that will go away in April. We're in great shape, though.
This is Dr. Cameron Kyle Seidel, ER and critical care doctor from New York City. 9 days ago, I opened an intensive care unit to care for the sickest COVID-positive patients in this city. In these 9 days, I have seen things I have never seen before. In treating these patients, I have witnessed medical phenomenon that just don't make sense in the context of treating a disease that is supposed to be a viral pneumonia. 9 days ago, I presumed I was opening an intensive care unit to treat patients with a virus causing a pneumonia that was ravaging lungs across the world, starting out as something mild, a cough, a sore throat, and progressively increasing in severity until ultimately ending in something called acute respiratory distress syndrome, or ARDS. This is the paradigm that every hospital in the country is working under. This is the disease, ARDS, that every hospital is preparing to treat. And this is the disease, ARDS, for which in the next 2 to 6 weeks, 100,000 Americans might be put on a ventilator. And yet, everything I've seen in the last 9 days, all the things that just don't make sense, the patients I'm seeing in front of me, the lungs I'm trying to improve, have led me to believe that COVID-19 is not this disease, and that we are operating under a medical paradigm that is untrue. In short, I believe we are treating the wrong disease, and I fear that this misguided treatment will lead to a tremendous amount of harm to a great number of people in a very short time. As New York City appears to be about 10 days ahead of the country, I feel compelled to get this information out. COVID-19 lung disease, as far as I can see, is not a pneumonia and should not be treated as one. Rather, it appears as some kind of viral-induced disease, most resembling high-altitude sickness. It is as if tens of thousands of my fellow New Yorkers are on a plane at 30,000 feet and the cabin pressure is slowly being let out.
How can we know what the actual death rate of COVID-19 is if we are not going to be very, very particular about separating those who had pre-existing conditions? Well, when you go to the CDC's website, they are not as good at it. Unfortunately, when we typed it in, this is what we had to do. We went to https://wonder.cdc.gov. We went to detailed mortality, okay? You can do this too. You have to agree to their terms. Now, we want to do a search, right? So what we searched for was the 15 leading causes of death. And then we want to do it for the most recent year. I wish we could have done 2019 or 2020, but 2018 is all that's been updated, so we selected 2018. And here it is. Here are the top causes of death 2 years ago in America. These would be your comorbid conditions. Now look at that. At the top of the list, as we all know, is diseases of the heart. 655,000 people in America died in 2018 from heart conditions. But what if you have coronavirus and a heart disease and you're in the hospital? If you die, are they going to list it as a COVID-19 death? Now look just 4 rows down. This is an extremely significant number. Chronic lower respiratory disease. These are all the respiratory diseases that are basically below your neck, meaning your lungs, so asthma and COPD. In 2018, 159,486 people died of lower respiratory disease. Now let's go down 2 more places to diabetes, because we're hearing that a lot of people that are dying in this death rate are those that are severely overweight, older, and suffering from diabetes. Well, diabetes kills nearly 85,000 people a year. Influenza and pneumonia, 59,000 people. So just think of those categories. These are all people that will easily have comorbidities with coronavirus. So there were 300,000 potential comorbidities. And then you go to heart disease, 655, you're at nearly 1 million people. So how are we listing the deaths? How is this getting listed? I'm hoping, just as Bhakti is in Germany, we're all hoping America's going to be really, really tight about this, right? We're really going to nail it down. Well, I want to go back to something we just touched on last week, and that was the CDC advisement talking about how to categorize a death for COVID-19. It is important to emphasize that coronavirus disease 2019 or COVID-19 should be reported on the death certificate for all decedents where the disease caused or is assumed to have caused or contributed to the death. So they literally tell them right there, go ahead, and even if you're assuming, if the test didn't come in and you have to assume. Now, it goes even deeper. You may think that I'm pushing this, but this is the actual document that was sent out. And they really doubled down. Last week, we were just showing you what they were recommending, but they actually came out with an exact coding now. The coding. Now, in every hospital, here it is, saying we have a code for COVID-19. This is the article. The new ICD code introduced for COVID-19. This was March 24th. Remember, March 24th is right about the time you start seeing the COVID deaths exploding. Right there. Look at March 24th. It's right at the beginning. Did the deaths explode, or did we have a backlog that couldn't code it, is number one question. Once we start coding, this thing blows up through the roof. What happens if the terms reported on death certificate indicate uncertainty? If we have a question, look what it says. If the death certificate reports terms such as probable COVID-19 or likely COVID-19, these terms would be assigned the new ICD-9 code, meaning it doesn't matter if you were guessing at it. Doesn't matter if you just thought maybe it was COVID-19. Put in the ICD-9 code. And in case you're worried about backlash, look at this sentence. It is not likely that NCHS will follow up on these cases.
I think is critically important. Can you repeat what you just said, please?
Well, last Friday, I received a 7-page document that sort of told me that if I had an 86-year-old patient that had pneumonia but was never tested for COVID-19, but sometime after she came down with pneumonia, we learned that she had been exposed to her son who had no symptoms, but later on was identified with COVID-19, that it would be appropriate to diagnose on the death certificate COVID-19.
What? It's almost like they're saying, go ahead and call it COVID-19. We're trying to bump these numbers up a little bit. And don't worry, it is coming from us. Obviously, we can't say that. But what we're saying to you is, even if you think it's likely, even if you don't have a background, you don't have a test to prove it, and there's uncertainty, just put the code in there and don't worry about it.
I don't mean to interrupt you, but my heart is sinking right now as you're telling me this. You're a doctor. Why in the world would they be sending you out information to fill out death certificates, whether the person's been diagnosed with COVID-19 or not, but then to say in the death certificate this person's death was caused by COVID-19? That does not sound right to me.
I went to the person in our office who does most of the death certificates over the last 10, 20 years, and I said, does this sound right? I had her look at the documents that I'd printed off, and she said, well, we've always been told that you always put down just facts. You don't put down any probabilities. You don't put any presumptions down. It's just what you know. And so this is concerning, and it actually gets to your point, Chris. When we start talking about the data that goes into the modeling, we have to ask ourselves a question. Are we being forthright? Are we sharing with the public? Minnesota, North Dakota, we don't need to be having it sugar-coated. We want to know what's going into your modeling.
So with that being said, why would they want to skew the number of deaths due to COVID-19?
Well, fear is a great way to control people.
Okay? Don't worry about it. We'll take it from there, and you will never get called out on this. We want you to know, assume to have caused or contributed to death. Use the code even if you're just assuming it's a COVID-19 death. You cannot make this stuff up, folks. These are the real facts.
America is engaged in a historic battle to safeguard the lives of our citizens, our future society. Our greatest weapon is the discipline and determination of every citizen to stay at home and stay healthy for a long time. And we want them to stay healthy for a long time. So stay at home. This is ending. This will end. You'll see some bad things, and then you're going to see some really good things.
We're at war with COVID-19, we're at war with terrorists, and we are at war with the drug cartels as well. This is the United States military. You will not penetrate this country. You will not get past Jump Street. You're not going to come in here and kill additional Americans.
It's a military operation. It really is. This is an all-out military operation that we've waged.
If, let's say we do have a large-scale combat operations in Mega City, there's tunnels everywhere. Well, not everybody's going to have the specialized equipment. The specialized equipment is really for the deep underground facilities where we may have the threat of weapons of mass destruction or some chemical products.
And it's not going to be too long. We will heal our citizens, and we will care for our neighbors, and we will unleash the full might of the United States of America to vanquish the virus.
In the last 2 years, we've trained 28 brigades on how to fight underground.
Thermal research has done some more to use devices and tools to burn through that produce extremely high temperatures through burn through mechanisms. So you can gain entry into a secure area. That's what we're about.
Holy crap!
Good earthquake.
Holy crap!
Oh my god.
Oh my gosh. What's happening?
It's an earthquake.
I know.
I'm going full already.
Is it still rolling?
We see light at the end of the tunnel. Things are happening. Things are happening. We're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel.
Narcotics. Are there other illicit activities that you
Well, there are the activities of human trafficking, and especially with respect to women. And as you know, proportionally, it's mostly women. And it's a horrible thing. It's a horrible thing. And there's never been a time like it. Tremendous illegal trafficking in women and children also, but mostly in women. And it's illegal, and it's horrible, and it's disgraceful. And I've seen things that are an absolute disgrace. And we're trying to knock them out, and we're knocking them hard.
The bottom line is you're not going to get through. Now is not the time to try to penetrate the United States with illegal drugs to kill Americans. With the United States military, we will defend our country, regardless of the cost.
What we're doing out here is actually no different than we've previously done. We're just learning, hey, this is underground, so things change, specifically like oxygen. How much time should we be underground? Probably no more than an hour. Do we have the assets to continue moving underground? Are we going to outrun our sustainment? That's a scary thought. Going a mile underneath the tunnel with not a lot of sustainment because it's not wide enough for vehicles to get down there. Those are the things that we need to prepare for and start thinking about for the unknown fight.
Hey everyone, my name is Alexandra Agudelo. I'm a hospital corpsman 3rd class. I'm stationed here on the USNS Comfort. I'm Raw's crew, which means that I'm actually stationed on the ship. I checked in about 8 months ago during Continuing Promise 19. It's been a wild ride. I work here in the ER. I'm the only Raw's crew member here in the ER, and this mission has been really special to me. My uncle actually responded to 9/11 with the Comfort. He was a firefighter in the Army at the time, and having this opportunity to be here and follow in his footsteps, someone that is the motivation for me joining the military, It's been pretty awesome. This mission has been very humbling for me, and it's pretty amazing to be able to be here and respond to Americans after spending so much time in South America. And just kind of putting the Corman rate out there for everyone so that people finally know who we are. You know, we're here for you, and you don't have to be afraid anymore. Thank you guys for listening. I hope you guys have a great night.
We see light at the end of the tunnel. Things are happening. Things are happening. We're starting to see light at the end of the tunnel. And hopefully in the not too distant future, we'll be very proud of the job we all did.